Three, two, one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live and Let's Discuss. I'm Jeremy,
And I'm Noah.
and we're talking about Timothy Dalton's first Bond outing, The Living Daylights, also known as Just in Case Roger Moore Wanted to Come Back, the movie. Um, this movie's awesome. This is one of my favorite movies ever.
Yep, can only agree.
So the big thing at the end of View to a Kill, that I think everyone took away is they needed a new Bond, and they needed a new Bond fast because Roger Moore was just too old to be Bond. He didn't want to be Bond again. There we talked about this in the last episode. They wanted Pierce Brosnan, but he was on a television show, and they couldn't get him to be Bond. So they called up someone that they had tried to get twice previously, which is Timothy Dalton. And he said yes this time. And we got
Third time's the charm.
third time's the charm. And he brought us one of the best Bond movies ever.
I would say two of them, if you're going to be precise.
Well, yeah, but I was just talking about this one.
Yeah.
The Living Daylights tonally is very similar to most of the Moore era films.
I would say
to it.
Yeah, I would say it shares a lot with For Your Eyes Only and Octopussy.
Mm-hmm. But we now have a younger Bond, so we don't need to age up Bond. We don't need to do this. We don't need to do a lot of the things that they had to do with the Moore films.
Oh, and again, as we should mention, John Glenn is back as the director.
Mm-hmm. John Barry is back as the composer for one last time.
And he saved the best for last.
Yes. We get my favorite Bond opening ever with the training. They're doing a training thing where M has 3 double O's jump out of a airplane, and they're going to sneak into an SAS military base. And it's a training exercise. They're supposed to be shot with paint if they're caught. But there is an assassin in there killing off the double O's, and then Bond ends up fighting the assassin, which is a great scene of showing off that Timothy Dalton can fight a bit.
Yeah. I like his reveal, the dramatic turn, and we see his face for the first time.
Iconic. And they have a nice fight. Bond ends up landing on a yacht with this woman who's looking for a real man.
Yep.
That he borrows her cell phone, that big old cell phone.
Oh, that's a great one, this ancient monstrosity.
This big brick, and he calls in, he said, I'll be back in an hour, and she offers him champagne. He's like, make it 2. And then, bam, we get Aha, The Living Daylights, one of the best songs in this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
A pretty interesting opening credits with we actually see a lot of the models' faces. They're not in silhouette, which is nice. A lot of revolvers firing, even though I don't think a revolver was fired once in the movie.
Yeah, but I think this is a great looking one. Yeah. I like it. I think I like it a little bit better than the View to a Kill opening.
Well, that's just straight up 80s neon.
Yeah, and this one, it still has the 80s flair to it, especially because Aha, but it's a bit toned down, where it still feels, I don't know, it feels like it could also fit today, in a way.
Yes. Oh, Lord. Let's get into this. So, Bond, the Living Daylight short story. Bond is a sniper. He's been sitting in this hotel room forever. It turns out the person he's supposed to shoot is a woman who's a cello player. I think she's a cello player in the short story.
I think so.
that plays into this movie where they have a Russian who's defecting to the West, and they're trying to get him. Bond's got the most 80s looking Walther sniper rifle I've ever seen in my life. It's not as goofy as the camera gun in the next film. Do you remember the camera
Yeah.
gun?
Oh yeah, I remember.
This is an actual Walther, I think, still makes this rifle. It is a precision sniper rifle. It's for target shooting. Like, it's a really accurate rifle. But it is the goofiest looking gun.
What I love about this, so basically, this opening is just like an adaptation of the short story with
Mhm.
some added elements because it factors into the larger new plot. But it's very accurate. And it
Yes.
already has a bunch of details that I like Bond is coming out of the place in like in a nice black suit, but then he like changes it and buttons it differently, and it turns into this like tactical gear almost.
Yes. It reminded me of, I think it's the beginning of Goldfinger, where Bond s- swims in and then he takes the um the wetsuit off, and it's a perfect pristine tux underneath. I
Oh yeah,
felt
it's
like
kind.
a little nod to that.
Mhm.
Um, the guy in the hotel room, Bond's spotter, is the most obnoxious man, and he is the definition of just obnoxious. And he's by the book. He's so by the book. And
And he gets a
Bond,
nice little character arc later on.
yes, and Bond is covering for this guy who escapes through a bathroom window. Our main villain for this movie climbs out a toilet window, and he's running down the street. And there's a woman cello player who's a sniper, and Bond decides to shoot her rifle instead of her.
Mhm.
He quote, scared the living daylights out of her. And he says the title of the movie was a little goofy, but whatever.
I love it.
I love this movie. I forgive the goofier elements. But the big thing is this Russian is aware of Bond, and he thinks that Bond's the best, and he requested Bond was going to cover him to get him into the West.
Mhm.
And so they put him in a tube. This is the greatest thing, where we have this Russian that woman that works for the um, British intelligence, and she runs this pipeline where they can smuggle people through it. It's an natural gas pipeline, and they shoot little tubes through it, and they can put people in the tube and fire them over the border into the West.
And a great joke. And I know people say like, "Oh, Dalton, the comedy is not his strong suit." I love the joke in here where he's telling the Russian guy Koskov, "Oh, you're a first customer." Like he's the first one they test this on. Like they don't know if it's even gonna work.
They throw him in, but she like seduces her supervisor,
Mhm.
which is pretty funny. And then Bond gets over the border. We have Q, which Q's really starting to look old.
Yeah.
He's having trouble going up the stairs.
Yeah. And he's on the field. Because,
Yes.
but it makes sense in this one. I guess they need him to operate the thing.
Yes. So Q's the same, M's the same. Who's not the same? We have a younger Moneypenny.
Yep.
Good choice.
Yep.
the the thought process there. She's I think my favorite. My Moneypenny.
Hmm.
Her and
Really?
Dalton really have good chemistry together. Specifically in this film, she doesn't have a whole lot to do in the next one, but I
Mhm.
was looking for it. I remember watching License to Kill, and then watching Goldeneye, and they had recast Moneypenny again, and being a little disappointed.
Yeah.
But she really works in these movies, and they've changed the way that Headquarters looks.
Hmm.
Um, MI6 looks. and specifically Q Branch looks different in the Dalton films
Yeah,
than
it
it
does.
ever has. Like I like it. It looks very 80s.
Mhm.
Um,
But that's also when we get some of his greatest gadgets. Oh, that's also
yes,
something with Dalton. Instead of the comedy coming from him, like with Roger Moore and his interactions with Q, it's mostly now just Q being funny with his gadgets.
yes.
And we get two great ones: the sofa that you sit on and it swallows you up, and the ghetto blaster, which is literally what it sounds like.
It's a boombox that's also a rocket launcher. And they're developing it for the Americans, which that is, you couldn't get away with that today. It's kind of offensive. But the one thing, M and Dalton's bond, they don't interact well, in my opinion.
Really?
In this,
Hmm.
there's not a lot there for the two of them. License to Kill, it's different.
Hmm.
I think that they just weren't used to one another, and that's why. If I have to pick a weak point, I think it's that.
I have another weak point. A
Well,
certain character who reappears for the first time in years. A British man. Oh no, an American man. I mean,
oh yeah, isn't he also in the Brosnan films?
no, he isn't at all.
Oh, you're talking about Felix.
Yep,
I
that's
thought
the
you were
weak
talking
point.
about the arms dealer because he's also in the Brosnan movies, isn't
Yeah, but he's a different character in that one. He gets from the villain and becomes the new Felix essentially in the Brosnan era.
he? Yes, because they didn't want to use Felix after the follow-up film.
Yeah, but yeah, I like the new M in here. Well, not new. He was new in Octopussy already.
Yeah, no, I like him and I like Dalton. I just don't think their interactions with one another in the Living Daylights
Hmm.
are that memorable.
Memorable, okay, I can give you. I think it's just because also the License to Kill interaction is very memorable.
Oh yeah, that's probably why. Um, and they just the thing with the Dalton era we should get into in this is that it is very short. Is the definition of it's better to burn out than fade away.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, at least he got one more than Lazenby.
yeah, well, I Lazenby isn't a good actor. Dalton's an incredible actor. And Dalton's big thing, and this is the one thing to pull out of this meeting with M, is that they bring in a Fleming element, which is the death to spies.
Yeah,
Which
this is the biggest inclusion of Smash as an organization and just an idea and a theme since From Russia with Love, I'm gonna say.
yes, more so than From Russia with Love, because that's
Yeah,
the
because
whole
they
idea.
only get mentioned in that one.
Yeah, and John Rhys Davies, who we think initially is going to be the villain, because the actor playing General Gogol was really ill when making Living Daylights. In fact, I think he died right after this
Mm.
came out. Um, so I think the idea was to have him as a big character in this,
Yeah,
but
that was the plan, and that's why I think the movie would have been actually been better if that was the case. Like even better than it already is, because John Rice Davis in this plays a new character, and it's just like it's a certain Russian guy that Bond knows and knows is trustworthy. And as a standalone, okay, makes enough sense. But he was supposed to be Gogol, who that would have hit harder because we already know the character and his relation to Bond.
mhm,
But I mean, at least he got a cameo at the end, which was also nice.
yes.
But I
Uh,
still think John Rice Davis, he's always reliable. So
oh yeah, and he's believable as a Russian, which I didn't think was.
I just watched him as Salah last night in Last Crusade. So
Oh, I watched him as Sala in Dial of Destiny at the beginning of the week, so it was weird. Um, but yeah, he's a great actor. You see
mhm.
him in all sorts of trash though. He was in Anaconda 3. Did you know that?
Is he in Robot in the Family? Or am I
Is he?
just making this up?
I've never seen all of Robot in the Family because we were supposed to watch it together, I think.
And then we gave up.
Oh, it's bad. It's one of the worst movies. That might be the worst movie ever made that wasn't called Rise of Skywalker. Anyway, um, there's an organization that our villains are kind of faking that is Death to Spies.
Yeah, it's an arms dealer, and he's teamed up with the Russian Koskov, he claims to be a defector to the West, but actually he just wants to get away from the Russians, and he's just going rogue on his own, basically, and screwing both parties over with
It's
the arms
kind of
dealer.
a redo of Octopussy in a way,
Hmm.
because it's literally it's another Russian that's just doing weird things, going rogue. But it's a bit different because he just doesn't care. He just wants money.
Yeah, which is a nice element.
And then we have his henchman who strangles everyone with his Walkman.
He is the best henchman in the entire franchise to me, Necros. That guy is awesome. Like, we have to talk about this entire scene. When Bond just rescued the Russian Koskov, and he brings him to this place where M is and all the other people, and then they leave. And the Russian is there, and Necros has to get him out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes in dressed as a jogger. He with like a Walkman, and he uses the Walkman to strangle and kill the milkman. Then he takes the milkman costume, and then he goes in that way, kills a bunch of security guys, and his milk bottles are grenades, and he throws them around.
Yeah,
and I love
he burns an agent on a stove, burns his face on a stove, and hits him over the head with a pan. They have a great fight that looks like just straight up a brawl.
Yeah,
and he also listens to the Pretenders.
Yeah, then the other great song. We got 3 great songs in here, all of which could have been the opening title song, honestly. But he listens to his own theme song while he's murdering people.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's just awesome. And I like the little details of him. Like, so he's a jogger at first, all in white and stuff. Then he kills the milkman. He's still keeping his white outfit, like removing one part of it, but he takes like part of the milkman,
like bib and hat.
Yeah. And then he goes into the kitchen, and then he gets the Russian Koskov. And then he's like, okay, I'm gonna dress as a doctor now. Like, pulls on a little doctor thing, and he's still wearing the white outfit and stuff. And he reassembles it to his needs in every scene, and it's like, that's so awesome. I love him as a henchman. I think he's just the best.
Yeah. We do have one funny Bond moment where he overspends the budget for Koskov and gets some really nice champagne, and M's face at the amount of money spent is pretty great. Also, we get the Aston Martin.
Mm-hmm.
The triumphant return of Aston Martin as the Bond vehicle with the Vantage V8.
Which famously they included in No Time to Die.
Well, it's the other probably one of the it's the other iconic car that doesn't also turn into a submersible. So yeah, they had the DB5. DB5 is always number one, I think, with everyone, and then you have the Aston Martin 86 Aston Martin Vantage V8. They still make the Vantage V8. That is still a car that Aston Martin manufactures as of this recording. I love the Vantage V8. It's cool.
Great.
Which we really get. It's the only time we really get a lot of Bond gadgets. There's the keychain with the gas. But there aren't a lot of gadgets in this.
Yeah, they toned it back to focus on the story and the characters.
Yes, it should be.
But other than with the Craig movies, where they also tried it, they still keep the fun and they keep some of it.
But the big thing in this movie is that Bond has an obsession with the sniper. Because he's of the opinion that she wasn't actually professionally trained. So he actually goes back. They're in Czechoslovakia, which is no longer a country. We didn't mention that that's where the Russian was getting smuggled away from. Koskov was being smuggled away from. It was Czechoslovakia. Um, she's a cello player. Um, she she actually gets arrested by the KGB and interrogated for a little bit, and leaves her cello case on a public tram, and Bond takes it. He finds that the rifle was firing blanks.
Which is also a funny scene because he does that in a public bathroom
Yes,
and the people hear him. And that's what I like. I like the comedy in this film. I think it works great.
it's nice and dry.
Yeah, how it should be.
Yes, and
Which I think that fits into the theme of like the tone of this movie. Like you said, it's like it could fit Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan. The tone of this is more fun. And Dalton does a great job with it, I think. But you can tell with License to Kill that was specifically for Dalton's persona written.
yes, but we get moments of Dalton's Bond, and Dalton's Bond is Fleming Bond.
Yeah, I think he's already perfectly like realized as the Fleming Bond. Like he already makes it his own in this one.
Well, because he's made it abundantly clear that the only direction he thought of that he could take the character is to make it Fleming's Bond.
Mhm.
He's the only one that was a fan of the Fleming books. In fact, Roger Moore infamously hated Ian Fleming's books.
Yeah.
Hated
And I
the
think
character
I've
Bond.
heard Craig read Casino Royale, but he threw it in the trash afterwards.
That's so bad. But yeah, so the thing is Bond falls for this woman. He lies to her and says that he's Koskov's friend and he's going to get her out of the country. And he's really into her. I think this is like one of those few times that Bond's genuinely in love with someone.
Oh yeah, this movie has a lot of romance stuff, and it actually works.
It does. To the point where there's some ridiculous things. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
Mhm.
To the carnival.
Oh,
They
you're thinking of the
go in
scene when they're on the roller coaster and he's still wearing his suit?
Yes, his tux after they went to an opera. Which let's backpedal a bit and talk about the one big car chase in this
Mhm.
movie, which is incredible, and it's in the middle of the movie. It's not. It's so big you'd think it was a climactic event, but no. Bond's trying to get her out of the country. And they have to go back for her cello, which her cello is like a big American, like famous American cello.
That's another great joke scene where Bond is like, "No, we're not gonna go back for it. That's stupid. We're gonna go right now." Hard cut. Bond looking annoyed in the car as she's running out with the big cello, and they try to stuff it in.
It was for the best because the Vantage V8 gets annihilated.
Which is a shame. It makes me sad every time I see it.
Yeah, but my favorite, one of my favorite Dalton lines is she's like looking at him as he's deploying the missiles and the V8, and he's like, Vantage V8, and he's like, I've had a few upgrades installed. Because he's just doing all the Bond gadgets and stuff. There's the laser that cuts the police car in half.
Mhm.
There's the sled tracks on it. It's fun, and then it has the self destruct, and it always makes me sad. And they end up sledding in the cello case.
Yep. Awesome scene, awesome payoff.
Yes. And they slide over the border into the west by throwing the cello over because they go under the barrier.
Yeah, while showing off the pass, like, here, look at it, where they go past. Yeah.
After all the Russians have been chasing and shooting at them. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
And then we have the carnival, which ends up with one of the most heinous deaths in a Bond movie with our stuffy British agent who's having his character arc and starting to become cool.
Yeah, because Necros, the best henchman, has like screwed around with like the mechanic door closing mechanism.
Yes, there's a sliding door,
And it has that's my favorite scene with well, my favorite scene is when he throws the milk bottles and stuff, this entire plot.
yes,
But him, there's just a shot of him waiting to activate the door mechanism. And he's listening to the Pretenders, to his own theme song, and he's just like he's jamming out while waiting to commit murder. And that's awesome.
and it is a heinous death. And I love that they don't show it.
Hmm.
You can imagine he gets smashed in a door. His final destination, basically.
Yep.
And he leaves the balloon that says "Death to Spies,"
Hmm.
which is pretty great.
And that's when Bond finally goes crazy. Like he realizes his romance, has gotten in the way of the mission.
Yes.
I think that's also when he scares like a mother and her child because he's running at them with a gun because he thinks
Yes.
it's Necros.
Yes. And then that's when Necros comes in and Bond's drugged in the hotel room.
Hmm.
And that's an interesting scene with the heart that's not even an actual human heart and they're hiding diamonds in it. And
Yep.
we go to the Middle East because this is a thing with this movie. This is the only thing that kind of dates it is that the Russians were in Afghanistan. And that's what the last act of this movie really deals with, the Russian invasion in Afghanistan. And the whole villain plot is they're going to buy opium with the diamonds, with which the diamonds were from the Soviet Union. They're gonna buy opium and they're selling the opium to make another additional profit, and then give the Russians their guns.
Mm.
They're kind of playing both sides.
Yeah.
Because they're trading the diamonds to the Afghans for opium. But we get the great fight scene with the heavy set Russian who tries to stab Bond with one of those weird like paper things that's like a horrible like spear they got a desk. I don't know what that's called, but he tries to stab Bond's face with it.
Mm.
It always makes me cringe. And then
Oh,
he
man.
gets gassed, his wrist broken by getting a door slammed into it. He's punched in the belly. It's messed up.
But that's also when Bond and the Bond girl team up with the Afghans.
Yes. We did skip a scene because we had to. The big thing is that Bond's supposed to kill John Rhys Davies.
Oh, that scene.
That is a great scene. This shows off that Dalton's Bond is ruthless when he forcefully undresses a woman to be a human shield.
More like a distraction.
It was like a distraction, and then he pistol whips a man in the face that has done nothing wrong, and he beats up John Rhys Davies a little bit, and then they both decide that they have to fake his death to make Kuskov actually come out and come back to the Russians. So we have the fake death scene, which is actually really graphic for PG.
Yeah.
Actual squibs. I think they got away with it because they were literally squibs.
Mm-hmm.
That was the point. And then we get bad Felix Leiter.
Yep. Sadly,
the
Bond gets abducted by some girls in a car.
That are with the CIA.
Yeah, and they take him to the worst Felix Leiter, maybe in the entire series, because he's the most forgettable.
Yeah, he can't act. That's the big thing. He cannot act. And so I guess the thought process was because they didn't have this thought process for License to Kill, because they actually brought back the Felix Leiter from Live and Let Die.
Mm-hmm.
The thought process was, we have a younger Bond, we have to have a younger Felix.
Yeah, because he looks young and weirdly like not fitting for the Felix character.
No. He's the worst.
Yeah,
His acting's so wooden, but thankfully he's not in a lot of the movie.
Yeah, that's why he's so forgettable. I keep forgetting Felix is in this. That's his first appearance since Live and Let Die.
Yes.
And thankfully, they went with the other actor again in the next one, License to Kill. And even though he is older than Dalton, like, I never got that. Like, they seem like way closer in age and personalities.
Well, that's because Dalton feels like a world-weary Bond.
Yeah.
In License to Kill.
Yeah, they are a way better pairing.
Yeah. So we're getting to the end. Bond and I can't remember her name. The character's name.
Kara, I think.
Yeah, they escape with an Afghan soldier. They end up meeting their leader of the Afghan resistance, or at least that sect of it, and they stage an attack so that Bond can he can blow up the heroin, which doesn't work. And we get one of the greatest fights on a Bond airplane with him and the henchman tangled in the net. They're tangled in the net, and then Bond kills him by cutting his shoelaces off his boot and lets him fall to his death, which is actually a stuntman jumping out of an airplane. I think the last time they did that.
Yeah, but it's awesome. It's an awesome.
It aged so well.
I think this also was the inspiration for Nolan in Dark Knight Rises with Bane and the airplane.
Yes.
Because as we know, Nolan is a big Bond fan.
He should actually. I don't want Christopher Nolan to ever direct a Bond movie.
To be fair, if he gets creative control, I think he would be better than the Broccoli's. I mean,
well, yeah, but it would just be. It'd be kind of nonsensical. I think it'd be way too artsy, and at this point, we don't need another art house Bond movie.
Yeah, I mean, they shut down Steven Spielberg and Quentin Tarantino at points when they wanted to.
I knew about Spielberg, but I didn't know about Quentin Tarantino.
Oh yeah, he wanted to make Casino Royale in the early 2000s, but he wanted it to be completely in black and white.
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
Yeah. But then Tarantino was like, oh, of course, then they made the movie after all, because I gave them ideas. I told them it would work.
No, they finally got the rights to it. They could.
Mm-hmm.
Damn. We'll talk about that when we get to Casino Royale, all of them.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the final shootout, because we haven't talked about the arms dealer.
Whitaker
and his obsession with battles in history.
He has a bunch of like mannequins that look like him, but as historical like war people.
Yeah,
like, and there's a Napoleon statue.
Yeah, and he has these boards that show like the Battle of Waterloo, the Battle of Gettysburg, like these big battles in history, which I remember when I was in private school that part of, I think it was 4th grade, you had to make, no, it was high school, because the 4th grade teacher, I think, also taught a high school class, a history class, and he had the students build things like that. They didn't have sound and lights, but they had models, and they were models of great battles. It was sea battles, though. I remember that because I thought that was really cool when I was 7. I haven't thought about that since I was 7, but it was similar to that. It's funny. And then there's a great fight between him and Bond in there where he fires a cannon via a television remote at Bond. And then Bond knocks something on him and crushes him, which is pretty great. and then Koskov is escorted away to be executed.
Which is great because it's not directly stated. Because
Yeah.
John Rice Davies comes in and he says something like, make sure he gets there safely in a diplomatic bag.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And then we end with our Bond girl gets her cello performance and gets the
And she meets Gogol.
She meets Gogol.
Well, almost. M is talking to Gogol about her, and Gogol wants to meet her. Yeah.
And then the Afghans show up and they got held up at the airport because they're all wearing their bandoliers, which
Too soon.
Yeah, in the post 9/11 world, that's just not acceptable anymore. But it was funny in the 80s.
It's still funny now, but for different reasons.
And then she and Bond hook up in the dressing room.
Yeah, in a nice, not perverted scene, like just a nice romantic scene, because the romance was like genuine, like not like, View to a Kill.
Yes, there was chemistry.
Mhm.
And we end The Living Daylights
With another Pretender song.
Yes.
And again,
This
soundtrack.
is the first Bond movie that they did this for up until I think Die Another Day, where they have a Bond beginning song and a different Bond end song. Because remember, it used to be a reprise of the initial Bond theme, and this is the first one that deviates from that. They have two songs. This is probably the best pairing of songs for because License to Kill has a great beginning song. There's the song that plays in like the CD bar, which is fine, but the end song is terrible.
True, but here we have Living Daylights. Then the Pretenders, Where's Everybody Gone, which is a banger. That is I would have been fine if that was the opening, credits song as well. And then again, the Pretenders with If There Was a Man, which is the slower romantic one, which is also great. That would have worked if this was a Roger Moore film. It's almost like they could have picked any film for any of the actors. If Roger came back, let's pick the romantic one. We got Dalton, let's pick Aha. If it was Brosnan, let's go with Where's Everybody Gone,
Yes.
But like I said, I think this is the best John Barry score.
Yeah, and it's his final one.
Mm-hmm. And we see him in the film. I think this is the one where he has a cameo as the constructor at the end.
Yeah, the conductor. Yes,
conductor. Yeah.
Yeah. The final John Barry. It's sad. It's sad because we get to License to Kill's music's fine. Mm-hmm. GoldenEye's is weird.
Yeah, that soundtrack has problems.
But yeah, it just this is the last like good John Barry score. Last John Barry score. I don't think he's still alive. I think he passed.
No, he passed away. Yeah.
But it wasn't until like the 2010s, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But he was an integral part of the Bond series, and it's a shame to see him go. But with the next movie, we're going to see a lot of lasts.
Yep, sadly. But final thoughts regarding this. Good story, great new Bond, great characterization and everything, just great acting with most of them. Like we said, Felix Leiter is the weak point, definitely. But he's not in it that much, so it's fine. Great action, great humor, and this movie probably has some of the best Cold War atmosphere.
Yes, this is the last big Cold War movie.
Mm-hmm.
Although GoldenEye does deal with that, but it deals with what happens after the Cold War.
Yeah. And one of the best Bond romances, just in general.
Mm-hmm. Since Tracy, I think.
Yeah, and what's also great is Kara, the character. She's not really written to be Bond's equal like they tried to do before and after, but she's just a normal person getting involved in all of this. And she's not a damsel in distress, which makes it fun and interesting.
Yeah.
They took care, they just wrote a normal woman character.
Mm-hmm.
And it works perfectly.
Yes.
And I
This
also we can't end this without mentioning same actress is in Extro, the horror movie.
That's right.
That was my first exposure to her. Really my first exposure, as we know she's completely naked in that film.
I forgot about Extra. Extra's a good movie.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. Check out Extra. It's weird. You see a weird birthing scene where a woman gives birth to a full-grown man, and it's gross and weird.
Yep.
And he's also an alien. Have you seen the sequels to Extra?
No, I've heard they are not that good.
I've never bothered. But yeah, go check out Extra. Check out The Living Daylights. This might be my favorite Bond film. This and the next one, they go back and forth as my favorite Bond film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this was a great 25th anniversary movie.
Yes.
Especially if we compare it to the other ones they did, which were Die Another Day and Skyfall.
Skyfall's not terrible.
Yeah, it isn't, but some of it does force in some references, like the.
It's better than Die Another Day with the the DB5 shows.
Yeah, the Aston Martin is in it, and it's breaks continuity of the Craig reboot, but whatever. But this one you wouldn't even know.
No. But anyway, we'll see you next time with License to Kill, the first PG-13 Bond movie. Scarface, the Bond movie. Anyway, have a good one.
Goodbye.
Sorry.